And this first segment of message is on the teachings of Jesus. You know, I've been to school a lot. I remember once I was at a family get-together. I think it was like a Thanksgiving meal. And I was about ready to finish up my PhD because I went to college, did a master's degree, did a second master's degree, and then going to school for my doctorate. And one of my family members said, "What are you going to do when you get done with all this schooling?" I said, "I'm going to retire. I'm done." You know, when I was in school, I had some awesome professors. Professors that were so talented and so gifted that I couldn't wait to get to class. And then I had some pretty bad professors that I couldn't wait until class ended so I could leave and get back to the dormitory. Let me tell you, when it comes to teaching, Jesus was a master teacher. You always understood. He always connected. He spoke in a way that challenged you, in a way that encouraged you, in a way that lifted you up. Jesus was a master teacher, and Jesus had a way of simplifying things. I don't know if you know this, but in the Old Testament, according to Jewish tradition, there are 613 commands. There are 365 negative commands, thou shalt not, and there are 248 positive commands. 613 commands. That's a lot of commands. So if you're like, "Hey, I want to obey all the commands of God," well, it's just hard to remember the 10 commandments, let alone 613. I dare say, even among us here today, fine Christian people, that few of you could stand up today by memory and recite the 10 commandments from number 1 to number 10. It's kind of hard at times. You know, we know thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not murder, but some of them were like, okay, what was that 9th one? What was that 10th one? But 613 commands. And then Jesus came along and he said, let me simplify, let me summarize, let me just make it in a way that you can understand and grasp. It's all about love. Love God supremely and love your neighbor as yourself. You ever heard the acronym KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. I like it better. Keep it simple, saints. Keep it simple, saints. And let me read you this passage. Matthew 22, verses 34 through 40, thinking about love. Love is the supreme command. It says, beginning in verse 34 of chapter 22, "But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. 'Teacher, which is the great or the greatest commandment in the law?' And he said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.'" Jesus said, let me simplify, let me summarize. Love God supremely and love your neighbor as yourself. He quotes two commandments from the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 19:18. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You know, when I think about this command to love, to me it is both liberating and demanding. It's very liberating because it simplifies things and it delivers us from a legalistic approach to God. I have met some Christians that it's all about rules. That's their whole Christian life, rules. They have all these rules. Some are from God, some are not from God, some are from the pastor, some are from their parents, some are from a TV evangelist. They have all these rules, and their whole relationship with God is really not a relationship. It's just a rule-based approach to God. And when they get, when it becomes the evening and they're about ready to go to sleep, they have to check off, well, did I keep that? Did I do that? Rules, rules, rules. Let me tell you, the supreme rule is love. Love. Do you love God and do you love your neighbor? Jesus was no legalist. There was not a legalistic bone in his body. And what he said is, it's not about rules, it's about a relationship. It's not about rules, about a relationship with God and a relationship with the people around you. And so it's very, very liberating. And so it's not about this rule, not about that rule, not about the rule of the pastor or the rule of your Sunday school teacher. It's about this supreme command: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Very liberating. But on the other hand, very demanding. Very demanding. Because you see, with the rules, you can check them off. Well, I didn't smoke today. I didn't gamble today. I didn't, you got your rules. You can check them all off. But did you love God that day? Did you love your neighbor that day? Very demanding, because it doesn't just say love God, but it says love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That demands a lot. That demands a whole lot. And so love should influence our emotions. It should influence our will, our thoughts, and our actions. What if our emotions were under the control of the love of God? What if our thoughts were under the control of the love of God? What if our will and our actions were all under the control of the love of God? Did you hear the song a minute ago? It's all about what? Love, love, love. Don't you love being around a loving person? That's why everybody loves their grandparents. Because the grandparents love you. The grandparents welcome you into their heart and welcome you into their life and into their home. Love. Jesus said, love God supremely. It says in 1 Corinthians 16 and verse 14, let all that you do be done in love. And I challenge you this week and every week that no matter what you're thinking, saying, how you're feeling, your actions, let love permeate every bit of it. And you'll be pleasing in the sight of God. And it's also demanding, because he not only says love your neighbor, but what? Love your neighbor as yourself. We all love ourselves. So this really isn't a command to love yourself. It assumes that you love yourself in the sense that we all practice self-preservation. I guarantee every one of you are going to eat today after the service. Why? Because you're hungry. And you're going to go to bed tonight. Why? Because you're tired. We take care of ourselves. And so what this is saying is, love your neighbor the same way you love yourself. Take care of your neighbor. Feed them, clothe them, help them, encourage them. I like to think about it in terms of my children. I don't know if I really knew what love was until you have those children that come into your home and you think, man, in a heartbeat, you would give up your life and never think twice about it. And what about if we said, love your neighbor as you love your children? Or love your neighbor as you love your grandchildren? To have that type of love. So on the one hand, it's very, very liberating. Don't think about all these rules and regulations. Just think about love, love, love. But also remember, it's a demanding love. Love God supremely. Love your neighbor as yourself. And I think this will be a lifelong pursuit. If you ask me right now, am I obeying this to the full? I would say no. But I'm growing in it. And each day I'm trying to love God more and trying to love my neighbor more as myself. And when I fall short, I say, Lord, forgive me. But keep filling my heart with the pure love of Jesus Christ. I encourage you, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.